Next curve.
Hey everyone, welcome to Next Curve's Rethink webcast. This is a new series that we're running this year. As you all should know, the state of privacy and trust. And I'm joined by my collaborator here, who is the great Debbie Reynolds, who is the data diva. And if you don't know, now you know, and you should know. And she's the founder of Debbie Reynolds Consulting LLC, and she laughs too much at me. How you doing?
I'm well. You bring it. I'm ready.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna bring this topic to you, and you're gonna like this one, I think, because this is right up your alley. And this is the regulatory landscape, okay, and the key shifts toward privacy rights and protections. And I think, last episode we kind of broke it down. This is where the state of personal data protections are. You touched on some of the regulatory things that have happened, especially since GDPR and the influence that it's had. But if we're looking at today and going forward, how do you see the regulatory landscape? And the angle that I'd like for you to treat this from is the standpoint of like the let's call it the risk landscape, right? Because it seems like on a daily basis there's a new technology, or a existing technology is evolving in a way that creates new sort of potential privacy concerns. But as you're working with regulators in particular, how do you see this landscape kind of shaping from the perspective of a regulator?
Yeah. Well, I think the risk is becoming a lot more complex as computing gets more complex, right? As a regulator, unfortunately, a lot of regulation doesn't happen until something bad happens. So I think people like me, it's very important that we try to get ahead of this, especially when we're thinking about all these new technologies that are collecting data that was never collected before. They're bringing risks that we never had before. We saw as a result of COVID, a lot of organizations couldn't figure out the best way. They couldn't really adjust to the different way that they need to protect data, right? So data isn't in a castle, right? So everyone was in the office. You thought we locked the door, we know who's in and out of the building, and we're secure. So now the data is everywhere. It's not in the building. It's in everyone's house. It's in everyone's computer. So you have the threat landscape has changed. The topography of the threat has changed. And I think this is going to continue to happen with kind of these emerging technologies that are coming out. So I think regulators are, they are unfortunately not as up on the emerging threats, because a lot of times that's really not their wheelhouse. Their wheelhouse is like, oh my goodness, this terrible thing happened. Let's try to get a groundswell of support to do something. And unfortunately, for privacy, in order for it to be really effective, it has to be done in a more proactive way and not reactive. So there's a place for regulation and stuff like that, but I think we need a lot more than regulation.
Yeah, and so how would you characterize the visibility, right? So you have a landscape. It is what it is, and we know that it's shifting all the time and morphing. But for the folks who should know or should have visibility to the landscape, is there a lot of fog? Is it clear? What's your feel?
I think my feel is, especially around media too. So it's like if you see a lot of things in the news about cyber, someone got breached or whatever, first of all, sometimes people think, oh my God, that's so scary, we need to do something. Or people say that would never happen to me. And so that is a huge problem that we have, where there may not be, the impetus or, the fire under people to be more proactive in those ways. And unfortunately, for small and medium-sized businesses, something like a ransomware attack or a cyber attack could end your business, right? They say more than 50% of businesses that are small and medium go out of business once they have like a cyber attack or a ransomware attack. And that's not insignificant because I think the stat is like 99% of businesses in the US are considered small, right? So the 1% are the Apples and the Googles and stuff like that. But typically these are much smaller entities that may not have the same investment in security or awareness. So I think, that for regulators, that's a problem. We are seeing more laws now that are trying to not be as reactive. Like there's some cybersecurity laws that are coming out, that are rolling out, especially around the finance and health, saying companies have to have written plans. They have to assign, a person who's responsible. The CEO has to know what's going on. Like they're just tired of this whole thing where they call a CEO, and they're like, I don't know what happened. Like, it's not my job or whatever. So I think, in that way, I think they can definitely be proactive. So, companies need to have plans in place. They need to know, it needs to be reasonable for what their threat is.
Right. Okay. So, so I wanted to go back and touch on the comment you made earlier that regulators have, sort of historically been reactive, right? And I think that's a important point to make, because I don't think that a lot of folks understand that regulations often occur when significant harm has occurred, right? And so we're seeing a lot of that in the crypto world, where you have exchanges failing and people losing billions of dollars in their let's call them, I don't want to call them investments, they're bets. And now there's this outcry for regulation. Well, they're a little bit conflicted about it, right? Because cryptos probably only have viability if there's no regulation, but nobody will admit it. But okay, that aside, but what's obvious is that the regulators don't really put attention to something that's maybe a relative unknown until it's caused harm. Now, do we see that attitude changing? I think you've kind of hinted that maybe some of that is happening, but could you qualify that there is this sort of shift, and let's call that the mindset shift toward how we treat privacy in the grander scheme of data privacy and the, let's call it, the mission to protect data privacy.
One thing that is creeping up, especially on the state level laws in the US, are requirements for companies to do like impact assessments or have contracts with their third party vendors and stuff around, what they do with data. So that was never the case, right? So they never had to do that before. So that's, to me, that's like a huge step forward, where you're saying, look, you need to consider what you're doing. You need to have these contracts in place with the people you do business with. You all need to explain and agree who needs to, how you're going to share the responsibility, right? About handling data and being able to tell that data lifecycle story. And those things were never asked for before. They were never required before. So in that way, I feel like they're trying to put more proactive stuff in there. So like, let's say, or probably a really good example, some of these laws, they have a look back period. So if someone wants their data or a regulator asks you something about some data, they want to see like 12 months back, right? So if you weren't doing what you were supposed to do from 12 months back, that's going to be a problem, right? So they're trying to build in little things like that, but that makes a huge difference because some companies were not ever doing that.
Right. Okay. Well, this is really interesting. And so that's actually all the time we have for this installment of our series. So next week, what we'll be talking, now that we know looks like there's some degree of attitude change or mindset shift toward a more, let's call it, proactive stance on privacy, we'll talk about some of the hot emerging technologies that are presenting new risks to privacy, namely, OpenAI, with all the, chat GTP stuff and Lenza and healthcare AR. It's going to be a fun one. We hope that you continue to follow us and watch this series. It should be continue to be and should be informative. And, of course, if you have any feedback or comments, please share them. We'd love to hear from you so that we can react and maybe respond in subsequent episodes. But remember to follow us at www.next-curve.com. You can find a link to our YouTube channel in the media center section, okay, under insights. And then also make sure to follow Debbie Reynolds at www.debbiereynoldsconsulting.com. And we will see you next week. Debbie, thank you so much. That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
See ya.